The word melody in music is just another word for tune. Okay, it's the tune in a piece of music. And what it really means, it's the organization of pitched sounds going horizontally, okay, one after the other. And it looks something like this in this example, okay? So you've got pitched notes, one after the other, going higher and lower, okay? So how do we describe melody then in a piece of music? It can be quite challenging. There are a number of different parameters, lots of parameters we can talk about, and we should talk about when we're describing a melody. First one is the range. What's the range of the melody? And this is just the distance between the highest and the lowest note. And you'll describe this as an interval of, for example, an eighth, an octave, or a tenth, or a ninth, okay? That would be a wide range. A narrow range might be just a third or a fifth, okay? And then we'll talk about the shape of the melody, okay? Is it rising? Is it falling, okay? So you might have a melody that kind of just stays about the same level, but if you see it going up and up and up, then you can say it's an ascending melody, or coming down, it's descending, okay? Then you've got to ask yourself, is it conjunct or disjunct? Now, what do those words mean? Conjunct means that the notes, the pitches change in steps. So going up in step would look something like this. So that went up and down in step. Okay, stepwise movement. This is called conjunct, where the notes are next to each other. So disjunct, you've guessed it, it's the opposite to that, it's leaps. So you might have a disjunct melody like this. Okay, so I had some conjunct. That's because actually, to have a good melody, you've got to have a mixture of the two. You can't have too many leaps, but it can be boring if it's all conjunct. So most melodies are a mixture of the two. But if there's some wide leaps, you want to talk about the fact that it's conjunct, or disjunct having the leaps, sorry. Okay? So the next is it diatonic or chromatic? So a diatonic melody, we've talked about diatonic music in tonality video. So if you're not sure about that, go back to there. But diatonic, simply put, means a 7-note scale. And if the melody is diatonic, it means the notes have come directly from the scale of the key of the music. So if we're in the key of D major, then we're taking, a diatonic melody would take notes from that scale. Okay, so that would be a diatonic melody. A chromatic melody, something with chromatic notes, would have notes that don't belong to that scale. So we might have this. So you hear that, it's chromatic, because we're borrowing notes from other keys. Okay, so that's the difference between diatonic and chromatic. What else? So there's some more things with melody, lots of things to talk about. Phrasing. So often melodies will be phrased, just like when we speak, we have to take breaths. So you hear when you're talking, you'll speak in phrases, and then you'll take a breath and you'll say another phrase. So in music, we try and mimic speech and singing by using phrases. So you might have a phrase like this. And then another phrase. And then another phrase. And then a final phrase. Okay, so those are different phrases. You can hear definite kind of arcs of notes with pauses in between, or a kind of stop for a breath. So those would be phrases. And you would see that written on a score with phrase marks, with lines. They look a bit like ties, but they go over several notes, okay? Now, there are a few more parameters to talk about if we're describing a melody which is being sung, okay? So we've got to talk about the word setting, and that means how are the words set to the melody. And there's two words really to do with this. is it syllabic or melismatic? So if a word setting is syllabic, what that means is each syllable in the lyrics has its own note. Okay, I've given an example here. It's a famous carol called Angels We Have Heard on High. And the first line of verse goes like this. Angels we have heard on high. So each syllable has its own note, okay? Angels we have heard on high. You can see clearly each syllable has a note. Melismatic word setting, on the other hand, melisma, this is where we've got one syllable over several notes. And this is heard in the same carol in the chorus. It goes like this. Gloria. Okay, so that one syllable through loads and loads of different notes. That's called melismatic or melisma, melismatic word setting. Okay, so you've got to discuss, is it syllabic or melismatic? The next, if there are lyrics, is there any word painting? Now, word painting is where the lyrics, the meaning of the words, will come out in the melody itself. So you might have something where, a lyric like, we're shooting into the sky, and the melody might go right up high in the high range of the singing. Okay, so something like that, where the meaning of the words is heard in the music itself. And finally, and we're going to look into this in a later video, but are there any melodic devices? Devices like sequences, motifs, ostinati, or ornamentation. Again, we're going to talk about that in greater depth in another video, but that's what you need to talk about. So as an example, I'm going to show you this melody here. It's Yesterday by the Beatles. So how would you describe this melody? So we'll start off with the range. I'll play it for you first. So it goes, yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away. Now it looks as though we're here to stay. Oh, I believe in yesterday. Okay, so we'll talk about the range first. So as you can see here, the highest note is here, a C, and the lowest note is an A. So the range, we would say, is between, all of the notes fall within these notes. That's the range. So from A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's a tenth. Okay, so we'd say the range is from A to C as a tenth. Okay, that's the range. After that, we can look at the shape of the melody. So we can see clearly, after the first yesterday, that's a rising scale, okay? So it's an ascending scale. And then that's a descending scale. So we can say that it's just large, it's ascending and then descending, okay? So that's the general shape of it. After that, is it conjunct or disjunct? Well, as you can see, mostly the notes are moving in steps. There's a slight leap there, but after that, it's all steps pretty much. Another tiny leap, and then a leap at the end. So a few leaps at the end, but mostly it's conjunct, all moving in steps, okay? Is it diatonic or chromatic? Well, it's using notes from a diatonic scale, okay? So we're in C major, but there are a few notes that change the key. So we've got, and then an F sharp, so the fourth and fifth are raised on the way up there. So we've got a couple of notes, and then when we come down, those are flattened again. So we're mostly diatonic, but with a couple of sharpened notes there. Okay, so you'd make a note of those. So phrasing, we've got 4 phrases. It starts yesterday, that's the first phrase, then a breath. All my troubles seem so far away, that's the second phrase. The third phrase is now it looks as though they're here to stay. And then the fourth phrase, oh, I believe in yesterday. So we've got 4 phrases, but what's unusual about this is their irregular lengths. The first phrase is just 1 bar, and then the second phrase is 2 bars, and the remaining phrases are all 2 bars. So it's a little unusual there. They're all irregular lengths. Okay, so that's something to point out. Then, because it's a melody that's being sung, we should talk about the word setting. So is it syllabic or melismatic? Well, you can hear that I think all of the syllables have their own note. Yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away. Okay, so all of them are pretty much syllabic, okay? There's no melisma at all, okay? And then word painting. Is there any word painting? Sometimes you have to get a bit creative with this one. And I've spotted that the words far away, so far away, it's where he's singing in the highest of the range, okay? So, all my troubles seem so far away. So it's up high, which you could say it makes it seem like it's even further away. It's kind of contributing to that meaning. And then the next line is, now it looks as though we're here to stay. So it comes back down to the bottom of the range where it began. So it's almost like he's back here to stay, okay? So we're looking for things that, that contribute to the meaning. So that's it. I hope I've given you enough things to talk about melody, and now you're going to have a question to have a go yourself.